Hello, Your Holiness. It's wonderful to see you again. Happy New Year. Losar latashi dalek. I am so excited to see you, and my students and people all over the world have been looking forward to this to today, this morning in India, this evening in Boston, Massachusetts, where we are today. And I'd like to say hello to everyone who's watching this webcast from all different parts of the world. My name is Arthur Brooks. I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School, where I teach the subject of leadership and happiness. And I, as well as everyone joining us today, we are thrilled to be with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is a living bodhisattva. He is the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism and the Tibetan people. Since 1959, he has lived outside Tibet, making his home in Dharamsala, India, from where he joins us today. The Dalai Lama works tirelessly for the dignity and prosperity of the Tibetan people and brings a message of compassion and love and enlightenment and humility to the entire world. In a world that's torn apart by hatred, the Dalai Lama is a voice for human unity. Over the decades, he has become the most recognized religious figure in the world, revered by billions of people and influencing leaders globally. He has changed countless lives, and those lives include my own life. His Holiness and I have been friends for 7 years. He has been a beloved teacher in my personal journey, as well as my leadership journey. He has helped me to understand that I am one of 7 billion human beings, that we are all brothers and sisters, and that my sacred leadership calling is to lift other people up and bring them together in bonds of solidarity. You will see tonight in Boston, in the morning, of course, in India, how he has taught me these things and how all of us can learn these things as well. In addition to our worldwide live stream audience, we are joined by a group of my students at the Harvard Business School from all over the world. They will be introducing themselves and asking questions later in the program. We're also joined by Srikanth Datar, the Dean of the Harvard Business School, Nithin Noria, the former Dean of the Harvard Business School, Douglas Elmendorf, the Dean of the Harvard Kennedy School, and Len Schlesinger, who teaches leadership and happiness with me at the Harvard Business School. And now we'll start our conversation about leadership and happiness with His Holiness. Your Holiness, you have taught me almost everything of importance that I know about the science and art of happiness. You've taught many years about this subject. Tibetan Buddhism teaches that there are 4 sources of happiness: spirituality, enlightenment, worldly satisfaction, and wealth. Spirituality is first on the list, so let's start with spirituality.
Yes.
What is the importance of spirituality and meditation in attaining happiness?
I believe, of course, firstly, I'm great honor and feel very happy, you see, having discussion with the Harvard University's professors and my old friend and some students. So now, happiness is I think, very purpose of our daily life for happy life. If, you see, the things become really unbearable, then die. Worst case, suicide. Even, you see, without suicide, but mentally unbearable sort of situation, then that really the will to live reduce. So automatically, you see, you will die like that. So therefore, the self-confidence with hope is the key factor for our survival. Now, usually I sort of expressing or description hygiene of physical and hygiene of emotion. Hygiene of physical is we usually take care. Now, hygiene of emotion, it's entirely dependent on yourself. So that means, you see, fear, anger, you see, these mental sort of attitude really reduce your life. So mental level, happy, and a full self-confidence. But then that mental sort of way of thinking really give us some kind of will. I will, my life is something meaningful, something useful. That kind of thinking, you see, gives you inner strength. So now healthy mind very much depend on this mental level self-confidence. For that self-confidence with sufficient reason, ultimately, you see, peace of mind. And also, you see, your life, as we are social animal, you are one of the member of the social animal. So, by birth, you see, the taking care of each other, that's very nature, human nature. So your life, you see, always, you see, helping other. And then, you see, you get the feeling, my life, really meaningful life as a social animal. This is just extreme way selfish thinking. Is actually against social animal sort of thinking. Social animal, by nature, take care your group. Just oneself, always think oneself, is actually impractical like that. So therefore, I always talk people. Firstly, we need some sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. On this planet, we have to live together. And individuals' future depends on them. One individual, one of the 7 billion human beings, or say the group, like that. So that, or say on that level, is too much self-centered thinking, selfish. It's actually against that nature. So extreme, it's a selfish way, is actually destroying your own happy life. Look, children, at young age, they don't care what color, what races, what nationality, what religion. So long we play together, and then you see there is a real sense of a community there. I feel once we join school, then not much talking oneness of human being, but rather different country, different religion, different color. And then also, you see, within same religion, same sort of color, but then the rich and poor. There are too many we have a distinction, differences.
Discrimination. No, discrimination.
Discrimination. So I feel now today's world, we, as I mentioned earlier, at the beginning, young age, there is sort of feeling of oneness. Then gradually join school. Then too much emphasis about these differences. Then you see develop the oneness of human brothers, sisters is diminishing. Rather, my nation, my country, my race, like that. So therefore, education is very, very important. Then the entire sort of world education, difficult to say. But like Harvard University, one famous university, you see, should carry some of these principles. Then show also the other universities like that. Harvard University, very, very famous. So I'm very happy to have this sort of opportunity to talk. Then, now here, some students, some students or some younger professors. So I would like to take questions and not.
Your Holiness, our students are. Our students will ask questions in just a minute. They're
Okay.
ready with a number of good questions.
Okay, so I would like to have a more complicated question.
Okay, a more complicated question, Your Holiness.
So that you see help me fully utilize my brain. If question is just a silly question, then my brain sleep.
Okay, no silly questions. Your Holiness, I want to ask you about leadership and happiness. You have met leaders from all over the world, and you've given them a lot of advice. They have a lot of money and a lot of power, but many leaders are not happy people. So this is a hard question, I think. Why are so many leaders unhappy people?
I feel very much so depend our education system. Then leadership, also human brothers, sisters. Basically same. We are the member of social animal. Now, as I already mentioned, you see, through education, we emphasize sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. We are a social animal. So that I feel our education, not much sort of emphasis on that level. So then, and then also, basically, we really need sense of oneness of human being, and you see emphasis my nation, their nation, my religion, their religion. These are secondary level. So basically, we are same human being. We have to live on this planet together, whether Easterner, Westerner, Southerner, Northerner. You see, we all share the same planet, same world. And then today's reality, the economy, and also now climate situation. You see, there is no sort of way to make distinction, our nation, their nation. The entire world, we have to live together, and the economy also, global economy, then the environment. Now we all share, for example, global warming. We all share same way. So now, unlike I think past century, you see, we can just emphasize my nation, my continent. Now time goes, you see, no longer say that. We should say we world, we human being on this planet. And now, as I mentioned earlier, because of global warming problem, we simply, you see, have to think we rather than just my nation like that. So now today, this intelligence, human intelligence, now think for wider way, not just my nation, my people, but think about humanity. Because we have to live together, and we all facing same problem, economy problem, then the ecology problem, these things. So I emphasizing importance of concept of oneness of 7 billion human beings. We have to think entire humanity, entire world.
Thank you, Your Holiness. When you meet a leader who's an unhappy person, what advice do you give that person? What advice do you give an unhappy leader so that the leader can be a happier person?
That's a difficult question. I think some leaders, I think difficulties, I think their own creation. I say, in my lifetime, I met a number of leaders, including religious leaders or political leaders. You see, most cases, those leaders more open mind, more liberal, it seems more happier. There's too much also the thinking oneself, as I mentioned earlier. You see, so now, and again now, the leaders come from society, and the leaders also, you see, through our existing school. So now, education system, I think a key factor, we should pay more attention about education, how to educate human brothers, sisters, more also wiser. and more, how to say, open-minded, like that. So the system, whole education as such, the people, entire community, from that kind of education, then certain sort of thinking, more narrow-minded thinking. Then leaders come from that society, same. So we can't sort of blame each those individuals. I think whole system, I feel, I always talking, our education system must be more compassionate, think humanity rather than my nation like that. So I hope Harvard University, you see, more research work, how to develop education system, which eventually bring more wiser sort of student. So that's very important. And then leadership come from that kind of education, automatically more wiser. Like that. That's my view.
Our students here today are the next generation of leaders that want to lift up the world and to bring compassion to people, just like you say, which is why this is so important. One of the things that we find is that even though we're all surrounded by people all the time, you one time said, we feel lonely when we're not alone. A lot of people feel very lonely today. Why do so many people feel lonely, and what can we do to help them?
Lonely?
Alone.
Oh. I think that's your own sort of way of thinking. Otherwise, now telephone and television, so through telephone, you see, we can reach everywhere. In ancient time, of course, for example, when we Tibetan, inside Tibet, then India very far. After now we come India and open society, and then from here, you see, telephone everywhere. So I think with the technology, I think the oneness of human world now become much more clear. So I think now with the technology, very, very helpful, you see, to communicate each other very easily. Meantime, ultimately depend on one individual mind and attitude, like that. So I think, for example, like Tibet, in ancient time, and nomad, they are really lonely. One family, two families, like that. Now today, you see the big cities, millions of people live together. So their way of life is very much dependent on the rest of the community. But mentally, those Tibetans who remain lonely, but mentally happy, and sense of also the group very clear. So they one family feel next family, if I need some help, I can ask. The very strong sense of one community. Without that, big cities, then next to your room, people there, but you do not know. And instead of trust, fear, distrust, like that. So these, I think, the individual mental sort of way of thinking, and the society, more compassionate society, then sense of a sense of community easily come. Not much sort of talking about compassion, just selfish, 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 then lonely feeling.
Do you believe, Your Holiness, that to be less lonely, that one should be more compassionate toward others? In other words, if I bring happiness to other people, will I become a happier person myself?
거사, 소월스. I remember, I think the New York business family, Pritzker, right?
No, Chicago.
Chicago, Pritzker. You see, one time, you see, of course, several times we met, and one time, you see, we met, you see, they take some group of Tibetan refugees settled in their area. And then the reason, they told me, Tibetan community, usually, you see, very friendly and very strong sense of same community and more compassionate attitude. So he very much impressed that kind of attitude, you see, should spread in America. So that's the main reason he told me. He took some, I think, few hundred Tibetan settler and near his place. So usually, wherever you see Tibetan live, you see people also notice more harmony, more compassionate. And except a few cases, otherwise, you see, very peaceful, like that. So therefore, now in big city, several millions, but mentally lonely. Like you see some area, you see people, very few, but not having just a lonely feeling. Okay.
Your Holiness, what's the biggest mistake that leaders make? What's the biggest mistake for happiness that leaders make when they're leaders of nations or they're leaders of companies? What is the mistake that you see leaders making all the time that you could, if you could correct it, that you would?
I think they think same community. I think European Union's leader, you see, since they create union, particularly like France, French, and Germany, in First World War, Second World War, arch enemy. But then after Second World War, under the leadership of Adenauer and de Gaulle, you see, they they create union of Europe. So those leaders in European Union, see, I think they automatically in their mind, when they use the word we, immediately European Union. Now England so far a little complicated. So you see more sort of what today, a sense of community, then mentally also more peace and a sense of we and much stronger. Like that. So eventually, I think like European Union eventually should create in Latin America and Africa. So eventually, I think the whole world should have one union of human brothers, sisters. I feel like that. I cannot see my lifetime, but hoping so those younger generation, it is your responsibility. Think more serious and make some effort.
Your Holiness, let's talk to some of our students now. Let's move to some of our students who are the leaders that will bring our world together. These are some of the most talented and gifted young people I've ever met who will be leading companies and countries with these ideas of sisterhood and brotherhood. And so we're going to start now with some of our students who prepared questions for you. And I want to start with Brian Hollins. So Brian, please introduce yourself and say where you're from and give His Holiness your question now. Brian Hollins.
Thank you for being here, Your Holiness. My name is Brian Hollins, and I'm from Washington, D.C. in the United States. My question is about human connection during the pandemic. Over the past year, I would imagine you have been forced to use Zoom, which limits your ability to touch and help people feel spiritually lifted. What is your advice to people who are struggling to stay connected to others as well as to their houses of worship?
I think better to ask the concerned people, doctors and specialists and nurses, if this kind of gathering can save, then no problem. If they give some warning, then even religious gathering, be careful, like that. So now, this was the kasa.
The pandemic.
Epidemic. This, for me, this gives me solitude meditation. So I think some people, this is a avoid meeting, or that is good for their own meditation or practice, like that. So that's, I think, depend on, I think should, because of the, should go according the concerned doctors or scientists and concerned for people. I feel like that. Okay.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Our next question is from Elise Propus. Elise.
Thank you for the opportunity, Your Holiness. My name is Elise Propus, and I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. My question for you is about polarization and technology, which you referenced earlier. In today's world of increased polarization fueled by social media, how can our generation leverage technology as a tool to discover harmony, compassion, and respect for differences?
Of course, as a technology ultimately depend how to use technology by a human being. Even you, as the kept several sort of the nuclear bomb, but now, at least in the last few decades, no one touched that. Even using now thinking, reduce, eliminate nuclear weapon. So, you see, the technology, whether sort of the create a problem or not, ultimately user of human being, human mind, more sense of one community, 7 billion human being, one community, and live one planet. And then, you see, these also the technological sort of these weapons, these, you see, itself no longer sort of move. Everything depends by human mind. So ultimately depend human inner value. And you see, sort of concept oneness of 7 billion human beings, not distinction, Easterner, Westerner, Northerner, Southerner, and also not distinction on the basis of religion, but rather oneness human being. The way born, the way die, entire 7 billion beings, same. And while we live, basically, we have to live together on this same planet. Okay. Yes, next question.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Our next question comes from Raul Chawla. Raul.
Thank you for being here, Your Holiness. I am Rahul Chawla, and I am from India. My question is whether happiness is really under our control. Most people around me who are happy seem to not be trying very hard to be like that. Can studying happiness help us achieve it as leaders, or must it just come naturally?
I think happiness is the basis of our survival. As soon as we're born, our mother give us some sense of security, and most important is mother provide us compassion. As soon as we're born, with mother's milk, and the children with other children play together, so always smiling each other. That's the basis of human life. I always feel after we join school, then we emphasize secondary level of differences. Not much pay attention about basic oneness of human brothers, sisters. This is my feeling. So, again, education. Education, before education, we already have sense of one community. Then in the education, we emphasize differences, nations or races, these are secondary. But basically, we are same human being. We have to live together on this planet. So if we emphasize more on that, I think one small example, myself, I always talk as a oneness of 7 billion human beings. So myself believe that. So whenever I go different places, I feel, human place, human brothers, sisters. You see, no sort of differences or feeling of distance. So really depend on our mental level attitude. So leaders also you see, from that kind of sort of education, that kind of society, and then naturally, you see, different way, rather than just lonely training. I think ancient time, kings or queens, these are, I really feel, outdated. Democratic system, much better. So sometimes I feel really Dalai Lama also have that kind of sort of feeling, something isolate. So the leaders, queens, and you see the kings or queens also, you see they, from childhood, they live in the palace, so a little bit sort of isolate. So now that already gone. We really enjoy democracy. So I myself, you see, last few centuries, Dalai Lama as a head, but I retired. Now our leader should be elected leader, not the religious name or some other thing, or some the leader. They're gone. About 10 years, I completely retired from regarding Tibet, the political responsibility. I completely retired. Like that.
Thank you, Your Holiness. And one thing I'd like to emphasize for our whole audience from this is the non-attachment of great leadership that His Holiness showed by stepping back as the political leader of the Tibetan people voluntarily. There are so few leaders in our world that step back voluntarily from power, and yet non-attachment is something that leaders should be able to demonstrate as well. And His Holiness has demonstrated non-attachment to his own political power. And we should be able to emphasize that in our own leadership journey as well. Thank you for that, Your Holiness. Our next question comes from Annie Plekta. Annie.
Thank you for being with us tonight, Your Holiness. My name is Annie Plekta, and I'm from Duluth, Minnesota in the United States. My question is, as a leader, how do you recommend we prevent feelings of disappointment and frustration over events and actions you cannot control from negatively impacting your mental health?
Here, one Indian scholar, ancient Indian scholar, his advice very practical. Now, so you see, he mentioned when we face some problem, analyze the problem. Problem not come independently due to many causes and conditions. So analyze, study. Then, if you find there is a way to overcome the problem, then no need, also the fear, full self-confidence, work hard. If the problem beyond our control, beyond our individual control, then no use too much fear. If there's a way to overcome, full confidence and work hard. If the problem beyond our control, then not much use to worry. Like that. That's practical.
It's very good advice, isn't it? All of us are going through our lives with all trying to control the things that we can't control. Just to let go of the things that we can't control will give us so much more time to do what we should be doing, which is to be thinking about all the other people in the world and the way that we can be helping them instead of thinking about ourselves. Thank you for that, Annie. Our next question comes from Sultan Bryce. No, the next question, I'm sorry. I got the order wrong. Sivan Gompers.
Your Holiness, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with all of us students today. My name is Sivan Gompers, and I'm from Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. My question for you is, how can we find our inspiration and true purpose? And related to this, how can we as leaders help other people find theirs?
I think ultimately your life, whether successful life or difficult life, entirely depend on yourself. You see, one ancient sort of Indian sort of tradition say, even if the Buddha say, oneself is master of oneself. So therefore, the self-confidence, and for that, knowledge, very important. Without knowing much and a foolish self-confidence, it is dangerous. To study and look holistic way, then also I think here faith not much sort of helpful. Analyze. We call analytical meditation. So with help of modern education and information, and then through analyze, through investigation, once you reach full confidence, I think that's, and confidence related with the brain, and then warm-heartedness, here, compassion. Now these combine, then you can be positive individual who fully confidence yourself. Meantime, you see, ability to analyze and things not depend on faith, but analyze, including scientific research. That's, I think, the best way to develop full confidence. And then, meantime, helping other people. Okay, now this is fifth way.
No.
This is an important point for our students. Your Holiness, you have said that leaders need to use their brain and their heart, to use their brain to look at science and research, and their heart so that they can love others and lift each other up, to use science so that we can love each other better. Is that what you're saying?
Right. 그래서
No, 다들 그런 결혼 지성부터 좀 괜찮네. 저 생리 그래서 장배 토네 아니 먼저 셈이야와.
어디들이 있어.
리베스 뭐.
Thank you. The next question comes from Sultan Bryce. Sultan.
Your Holiness, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Sultan Bryce from North Carolina in the United States. We learn here at the Harvard Business School that the job of business leaders is to create opportunities for others. Do you agree with this? What do you believe is the most important job for business leaders?
Again, the business in human society. So whether your business work successful or not depend on neighboring people's sort of attitude. Every people, you see, trust you and find useful, then your own sort of business also will be successful. So every human work in the human community, so everything, whether religious sort of teaching or anything, you see, whether successful or not, depend on the rest of the community. So, yes, business work also, you see, depend on the community. And now, international level, big company also, you see, whether they are successful or not, depend on worldwide sort of what's the sort of admiration or trust or like that.
It's a wonderful question. Thank you for this answer that success in business depends on others. So the job of business leaders is to lift other people up. The next question comes from Kathy Yu.
Thank you so much for having us, Your Holiness. My name is Kathy Yu, and I'm from San Francisco, California in the United States. My question to you is, what happens to people and their happiness when they don't feel useful to a society? Do you think not feeling useful lies behind the growing political and social divide in many countries?
That's quite a complicated sort of question. 지소로 반도 지도의 민도 냠바데 제거 망부나 칩시기 랑소다 지소 편중 와 미침베 왕게 a problem which we human society facing I think depend on many factors. Since our society itself very complicated sort of society. But I feel ultimately the education give us the sense of oneness of human brothers, sisters, where we live, and think more on the well-being of the society and long run. That's, I think, main factor. Then, otherwise, you see, the different sort of society, different system, and different sort of leaders. There are some different, also the conflict. And then, among such sort of situation, then things are complicated, difficult. That's my feeling.
Thank you, Your Holiness. The next question comes from Yogi Kurniawan. Yogi.
Your Holiness, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Yogi Kurniawan, and I am from Indonesia. My question is about prosperity. Traditionally, people are happy from simple things, but now people are chasing to grow their personal wealth. What is the effect of this on happiness?
It is quite clear. The real sort of happiness related with mind, emotion. So, materially, even poor, they mentally can be very happy. Then, some nowadays, more businessmen or more also the rich people, it's the facility of sort of also their life, plenty. But in a mental level, discontent and too much sense of competition, always want more, discontent. So then, the physical level seems to be very good, but mental level always worry, distrust, and fear, and that eventually create anger. So, such case, the person will not be happy one, full of anger, full of sort of jealousy, like that, distrust. So now, the very important is our life, materialistic life, but we should not neglect some teaching, some knowledge about our emotion, how to keep emotion level peace. For that, what kind of emotion is peace, helpful to maintain? Some emotion very harmful. So we need, you see, knowledge about map of emotion. That's very important.
Your Holiness, one time I asked you to tell me the meaning of wealth. You were teaching me one time about the idea that wealth can bring happiness, and I found that very surprising. I said, how can it be that in Tibetan Buddhism, that the Dalai Lama would teach that wealth can bring happiness? And what you taught me is that wealth does not mean the accumulation of money, and that wealth does not mean having a lot of possessions. You told me that to be wealthy is to be able to build something with your life and to be able to share abundantly with other people. Can you talk about this definition of wealth a little bit?
Oh yes, the contentment, mental level, is the key thing. The like some sort of ancient, the great practitioner remain mountain, nothing. One day, Miller Reva, so one day he in his empty cave, no, one thief come. So try to find something. Then Miller Reva laughed. Here, when I try to find something in daytime, nothing find. So now you in night, impossible to find something. So you see, the Miller Reva himself, you see, like beggar, but in mental level, of course, you see, I think a thorough training about mental level, how to develop peace, and other sort of practice. So he really feel mental level, he very rich. So you see, he very happy in mountain. Like that, I think actually the mental level is full of knowledge about mind, about emotion, then how to control these destructive emotion. For that, try to, now for example, anger is worst kind of enemy. The antidote of that, compassion. Not just a prayer, but practice compassion, then automatically anger reduce. So we need more knowledge how to tackle our mind, our emotion and how to promote positive, constructive emotion. And so long constructive emotion increase, then automatically destructive emotion reduce. So the important is whether you believe in next life or God, that in order to be day-to-day happy person, the more knowledge about our emotion, how to maintain our peace of mind. Like that, right?
For our students who are watching and people around the world, His Holiness has just referred to Milarepa, the 15th century Tibetan Buddhist master. This is somebody whose teachings are very important that all of us can learn a great deal from. The next question comes from Rachel Draper. Rachel.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Your Holiness. I'm Rachel Draper from England. My question to you, have you observed differences in spirituality and exploration in more recent generations of young people? What advice would you give to us?
Now, of course, one of my commitment is promotion of religious harmony. So I respect all different religious traditions, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Jainism, so on. And within Buddhism, the Pali tradition not much use logical approach. What Buddha says, yes, yes, faith. Then Sanskrit tradition much depend on reasoning. So therefore, the Sanskrit tradition and Nalanda tradition, even Buddha's own word, we investigate. If you see Buddha's own word, through investigation, some difficult to accept or contradiction, then we reject. Like the great master of Nalanda, like Nagarjuna, and what's the daughter? Chandrakirti. So these great master, you see, always you see reasoning, investigation, not faith. So I remember Chandrakirti's one verses. So certain philosophy, complicated philosophy, some the previous master who find it difficult to sort of understand these complicated, different sort of also deeper level of philosophy. He show they are sort of great, famous, also the Buddhist master, but you see, since they are analytical sort of thinking, not that much smart, so he abandoned this master's feeling. So the Nalanda tradition, even you see great Buddhist master, you see, sometimes they reject. So that's good. So always is reasoning. So therefore, now, my own case, last few decades, I have serious discussion with scientists. You see, since we are not based on faith, but analytical meditation, analyze. So with discussion with scientists, very helpful. Sometimes you see, some Buddhist concept through centuries, you see, believe, like you see, Mount Meru and the sun and the moon, same size, gone. So you see, we must be the realistic, sort of analyze So with scientists, we also, you see, sometimes, in some extent, you see, some useful sort of information. But at mental level, modern science, just the beginning, now more research work about brain, about mind. Otherwise, you see, science mainly toward material thing. Now, a modern scientist now thinking more about our brain with that mind emotion. So now, you see, we can work together with the modern scientist. Very helpful. Many scientists really appreciate when we exchange different views and also the argument like that. So there's no problem. As far as Nalanda tradition, the Buddhist tradition, particularly Nalanda tradition, always investigate. So young student who always want to investigate, no problem. 가. 자, 아주 신기해라. 진짜 네 말에 최저 당스럽도 이지 맞아야 돼 시고로다. 이지 강도 돼야 돼. 당체스럽도 더 잡아줘야 돼. 다른 게 있어야 되다. 경험도 봐. So when we carry investigation, our basic mind should be very neutral, very objectively investigate. If we sort of little bit biased, then you see the investigation not be proper, completely neutral, and investigate. So that's Nalanda Masters, I think the way of sort of investigation. Here you see the logical approach, very important. Now Nalanda tradition, very much sort of based, very much because of the emphasis, logical approach. So now here, in Chinese Buddhism, emphasis more on meditation. In Tibet case, since 8th century, the Tibetan emperor invited Nalanda master, at that time, one of the top Nalanda master. He himself, logician. His writing about logic, still we study. So we trained always why. We never say yes. So that's very useful. So you see, we easily can discuss with the modern scientists. They also, you see, raise always why. We also always raise why.
For our audience, His Holiness in his monastery, he has a sign on the wall, which is a quote from the Lord Buddha that says, "Don't accept my words, work to understand yourself," which is the point that His Holiness is making right now. That when we talk about happiness, for example, it's not a question of a feeling. It's not just faith. It's also a question of using our brains, using our logic, so that our hearts can be oriented in the right direction. Your Holiness, I have one more question for you before we finish and before we summarize and before we say goodbye today. And that question is really for our students. Our students are just starting out their careers. Now, at the Harvard Business School, we have wonderful students who go to lead big companies and to have important leadership positions. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be happy. What advice can you give to them right now that will make it easier for them when they get older to be happy leaders who bring more happiness to other people?
Oh, now I think basically I want to mention the since you see we must base on logical approach, so we should look many different places, field. Now one example, animal, no sort of sophisticated mind. So simply their food, okay, there no immediate threat, then feel peace, happy. Now since we human being, a lot of was a complicated mind, with that a lot of desire, there's a lot of doubt. So more, more problem. So actually, the happiness and sadness ultimately depend on our own mind. So now, it is wrong. We cannot say, since these sophisticated mind create a lot of problem, so without much thinking, just meditate, that also wrong. We have to sort of utilize fully about our mind. Then, so now, since we not like other animal, there's a lot of sort of problem. Actually, our own mental creation. So now study fuller knowledge about mind, about a system of emotion. That is important. We should not consider these are mentioned from religious text, but we should consider these are the academic subject. So you see, whether believe religion or not, simply you see the complicated mind here. So it is important to know about knowledge, about explanation, about emotion, about mind from religious text, particularly Buddhist text. You see, useful. So, we human beings, unlike other animal, there are a lot of problem created by mind, human mind itself. So the remedy, also you see, within the human mind. So investigate. So now here, the quantum physics, very useful. One my Indian friend, Raja Ramana, he once told me the quantum physics in the West, something new. In India, over 2,000 years, that concept already developed. It is true. So mainly, according my limited knowledge about quantum physics, you see, there is big differences, appearance and reality. Most of destructive emotion based on appearances. So appearance, some good thing appears something positive, attachment. Some sort of negative, unfriendly things appears too much fear, too much suspicion, and anger, that creates anger. So all depend on superficial appearances. When you face some sort of like enemy, very negative, but deeper level, what is enemy? Do you feel angry? That enemy is physical, enemy is mind, or investigate enemy is emotion. Enemy is emotion, one day one emotion, another day different emotion, just like me. So we cannot say definite, this is enemy, something mentally, something very negative, never. So mind always moving. So like that, through investigation, there is no independent enemy or negative. Similarly, sort of friend to develop attachment. So the quantum physics really really help to know nothing independently exists as appears, always change. Deeper level, now for example, human level, deeper level, all are human beings. Today is your worst kind of enemy, human being, not from the birth, but later, due to certain sort of factor, you see, we develop one negative feeling. Now today, we feel, oh, this is my enemy. Similarly, the friend from the birth, not necessarily. We do not know. They eventually, you see, some become your friend, and then too much attachment. So these all are on the basis of appearance, and limited are because of the or judge, like that. So the quantum physics, you see, there is big differences, appearance and reality. So that's Buddhist psychology, Nalendra's tradition, psychology. Also, it's similar, big differences, appearance and reality. So like that. So these are very useful, and all our mind sophisticated. The negative, destructive emotion also quite sophisticated, but similarly, our mind very, very sophisticated to investigate deeper level. Then the basis of attachment, basis of anger, no independent existence as appears. So now here these things, as I already mentioned, we should need more knowledge about the whole system of mind, and then differences, appearance and reality. Like that.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We're almost at the end of our program, and I want to take one short minute to summarize what I believe His Holiness has taught us here tonight in Boston, in the morning in India, and different places around the world. The main theme of His Holiness tonight is that happiness comes from love for others. And he's made this point in 4 important ways. He's made the same point in 4 ways. The first is he taught us tonight that happiness comes from being useful and having a life's purpose. And that purpose, the purpose that we have, our highest purpose is caring for each other, lifting each other up, remembering that each of us is one of 7 billion human beings. The second way that he made this point is when he talked about unhappiness, which is our own creation. Unhappiness comes in our own mind because of self-centeredness. We become unhappy because we're unnatural, and we are unnatural when we're thinking only of ourselves. We can only be truly happy when we get out of this creation that is unhappiness by focusing on other people. The third point that he made was about our intellectual lives, about research and investigation, about our brains, and the importance of sanctifying our intellectual work by putting it in service of our hearts, putting it in service of our love for other people. That in fact, our hearts can be most effective when our brains are fully engaged in the purpose, sanctifying that purpose and loving each other. And finally, the fourth way that His Holiness made this point, that love comes from happiness comes from love for others, is that we need education, that we need an education system that teaches each of us unity and oneness and sisterhood and brotherhood. And that is our leadership challenge. That is our leadership challenge at the Harvard Business School and at Harvard University. That is the last note for this program tonight. At Harvard University and at the Harvard Business School, we have a mission to improve the world. So for all the people watching today, I hope we have achieved this with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I hope that this conversation has lifted all of you up around the world and made you better prepared to be the kind of leader who lifts other people up as well. We are so deeply honored to have spent this time with His Holiness. He has inspired us to be our best selves, and for this we are very grateful. So Your Holiness, on behalf of the students that you have touched today and our university and everyone watching, Thug Cheche, thank you very much.
Tujiche. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I see you very soon in person.
Yes, thank you. Now, time always is moving. Past is past. We cannot change past. Future not yet come. So what kind of future? Much depend on present. So the present younger generation, you are the key people, you see, who create happier future. So please, the younger generation or these young students, and particularly Harvard University student, now please, you should not think just copy what happened. Or now new situation, so now new thinking, very necessary. So think more realistic. These ultimately much depend on the mental level. So please think more. And then I'm hoping this younger generation, 21st century generation, and my generation, 20th century generation, create a lot of problem. Now, but for me, you see, I lost my own country and come to India as a refugee. So this country, over 1,000 years, we have very close link. And all our knowledge come from Indian master. So now our relation, like Indian Prime Minister, once was mentioned, land of Buddha. So we have something very historically very close link. So now here I live as a refugee, so no need formality. Very easy to discuss. So this knowledge Indian master, as I mentioned earlier, even Buddha's own word, reject. So that kind of tradition, very logical, objectively. So I'm student of that tradition. So now, as a refugee in this country, stateless, so I have more opportunity to discuss these things. So I'm very happy, and particularly now today, the Harvard University's some students, some teachers, I very much sort of happy and feel proud. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Holiness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.